Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some Plato today, but not the usual Republic stuff.
Right,
We're
right.
going deeper. I mean, we all know about philosopher kings, but what about everyone else? How did Plato see education shaping, the whole of society, not just the elite?
That's the question, isn't it? And luckily, Plato gives us plenty to work with.
Oh, yeah, we've got a whole stack of dialogues here just waiting to be unpacked. Laws, Critias, Gorgias.
Phaedo.
There's so much more to his educational philosophy than just, the Republic.
Absolutely. We're going to find some real gems here, I think. Some of those aha moments that make Plato feel so relevant even today.
Exactly. And what strikes me is uh, Plato doesn't just see education as like cramming facts into your head. It's much bigger than that.
It's about cultivating virtue. He saw this deep connection between how individuals grow morally and how well society functions as a whole.
This idea of harmony, right, between the individual and the community.
Exactly. It's fundamental to Plato's thought.
Okay, so let's dig into that a little. Now, we often think of the Republic as like Plato's ideal society. But in Laws, he's designing an education system for a new colony, right, on Crete. It's a totally different context.
It is, yeah.
So what does that tell us about how his ideas on education could be applied, more broadly?
Well, it shows us that he was thinking practically. Different societies, different needs. Education has to adapt.
Right, makes sense.
Like in Laws, he talks about how the Canossians, the people already living there, would be involved in choosing who upholds the law. It's about collaboration, not just top-down rule.
Interesting. So even in, like, law enforcement, Plato wanted citizen participation.
It seems that way, yeah. And that links back to this idea of harmony. For Plato, a good society needs active, virtuous citizens, which all starts with education.
So it's a lifelong process,
Yeah.
right? Not just something you do as a kid.
Exactly. It's woven into the very fabric of society. And this reminds me of Critias, where he describes Atlantis.
Ah, Atlantis.
Oh,
A
yeah.
legendary society, right? Even if it is fictional.
Even so, it gives us insights. He talks about having dedicated spaces for learning and communal meals where people exchange ideas. Learning is just part of life there.
Not stuck in some classroom. I love that detail about the fountain in Atlantis, by the way. Warm water in winter, cool in summer. Talk about advanced engineering.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? It speaks to their knowledge, their mastery of engineering and resource management. And that knowledge was probably passed down through generations thanks to their educational system.
Makes sense. Okay, so we're seeing how Plato saw education as this lifelong thing, essential for a strong society. But he wasn't just about gaining knowledge for the sake of it, right? There's a deeper purpose.
You're absolutely right. It wasn't just about filling minds. It was about shaping people into virtuous citizens, people who contribute to that harmony, that well-being of the whole.
And that idea of virtue is key, isn't it? Even when he talks about like music and dance in Laws, he sees them through this lens of like character development. Even leisure has an educational purpose.
Exactly. It's about developing the whole person intellectually, morally, physically. It's all connected, contributing to a harmonious life and a just society.
But Plato also knew that knowledge could be misused. The power of persuasion, for example. Gorgias seems to tackle this head on.
Ah, Gorgias. That's a fascinating exploration of rhetoric. And yes, he acknowledges its power, but also warns us how it can be used for manipulation.
Like any tool, right? It could be used for good or for bad.
Precisely.
It's not enough to be a good speaker.
Yeah,
You need that moral compass, too.
absolutely.
Knowing what's just, what's unjust, that's crucial.
It is, and it raises the question, who gets to decide that? What's just? What's unjust? Plato really pushes us to think out our own values.
There's that bit in Gorgias where Socrates argues that, and this is wild, the best speakers, the most skilled, might actually have the least power
Yeah.
if they're only looking out for themselves, not the good of everyone. Makes you think, huh?
It does. Having that ability to persuade, it's a big responsibility. Plato knew that.
Oh yeah, power can be abused, even by the most eloquent.
Yeah.
And this reminds me, in Meno, Plato was pretty skeptical of people who claimed they could teach virtue.
Right, right.
Like it wasn't just a set of rules you could memorize.
Exactly. True knowledge, including virtue, it comes from self-discovery. From that reasoned dialogue, he wanted people to think for themselves, not just accept things blindly.
To question everything.
Yeah.
That's what real education is about, right? Not just absorbing facts.
Precisely. And that pursuit of knowledge, of virtue, it's a lifelong journey. The soul is always evolving, always learning.
Which takes us back to Phaedo and the myth of
Ah, yes.
the soul's journey after death, and how the choices you made, what you learned, It affects what happens next.
Powerful stuff. Education isn't just for this life, is it? It shapes us, prepares us for what might come after.
Makes you wonder what we should be learning, what will serve us well, not just now, but for eternity, maybe?
That's worth thinking about, isn't it? Plato's vision of education, it goes beyond just practical stuff, getting a job, fitting into society. It's about our souls, our destinies.
Wow. Okay, so we might not live in Plato's Republic, but his ideas on education, they still feel relevant. It's like a blueprint for lifelong learning, for becoming better people.
Absolutely. This connection he makes between intellect, morality, physical well-being, cultivating virtue, seeking truth through reason, those are principles that can guide us no matter what path we choose in life.
It's not about that diploma, that job title. It's about becoming the best version of ourselves for us and for the world.
And that's a journey worth taking, wouldn't you say? It leads to a more fulfilling life and maybe, just maybe, to a more just and harmonious world.
Speaking of harmony, I'm curious about Plato's views on the arts. He seemed to value storytelling, but also had strong opinions about what kinds of stories were okay.
Yes, that's where things get a little tricky. We see this in the Republic, for example, where he talks about censoring certain types of poetry and music.
Wait, really? Censorship.
He was worried about their influence, especially on young people, worried they could, corrupt them, disrupt the social order.
So not all stories are good stories.
That's the idea. He was particularly wary of stories that showed the gods as flawed or immoral, or that encouraged strong emotions like excessive grief or even uncontrolled laughter.
He thought those could lead people astray.
Undermine virtue, lead to chaos. Makes you think about today's world, doesn't it? We're flooded with information, entertainment.
Information overload. How do we even know what's good, what's bad, what's true?
That's the challenge, isn't it? And I think Plato would say education is key. It's not just about facts. It's about giving people the tools to think critically.
To question what they see, what they hear.
Exactly.
Be active, not passive.
Exactly. Don't just consume, think. Plato recognized knowledge as power, but without wisdom, without ethics, it can be dangerous. Education has to develop the mind and the character.
It's not just what you know, but how you use it.
Right, right. And that brings us back to harmony. That balance between individual growth and the well-being of the community. Education plays a vital role in achieving that.
So even though we're not in ancient Greece anymore, Plato's ideas still have something to teach us. It's not just about getting ahead, it's about becoming better human beings.
It is developing our full potential, intellectually, morally, physically, becoming active participants in making a better, more just world.
It's about that lifelong journey of learning and how it can change us, change the world around us.
And on that note, I think we've come to the end of our deep dive.
Thank you all for joining us on this exploration of Plato's educational philosophy.
It's been fascinating, hasn't it?
We hope you found it thought-provoking.
Plato's ideas, they still have so much to offer, even after all these centuries.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep learning, everyone. Thanks for listening. It really is remarkable how much Plato's ideas still, resonate today. But with all this talk about virtue and a good life, did he ever get specific? Like, what qualities or skills did he think were, essential for a well-rounded education?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of what Plato considered a truly educated person. He didn't just focus on intellect, but on character, too. Remember Meno. Socrates really digs into virtue there, how it can't just be taught like facts, but needs to be nurtured, discovered through, self-reflection and dialogue.
So it's not just about knowing stuff, but about being a good person, living a virtuous life. But what does that even mean, practically speaking?
Well, Plato believed certain qualities were essential for that kind of life, and therefore crucial for education. Things like courage, temperance, justice, piety, all contributing to, both individual happiness and a harmonious society.
Those are pretty timeless, aren't they? Courage, temperance, justice, piety. It's like a blueprint for good character, no matter what time period you're in.
Exactly, and he didn't stop there. Plato also saw physical well-being as part of a holistic education. In the Republic, he talks about how physical training, along with intellectual and moral development, helps create a balanced soul.
It's amazing how he connected all these different aspects of being human. It's not just about being smart or strong or ethical. It's about how they all work together.
Precisely. And that interconnectedness was key to his idea of a harmonious society. Well-rounded individuals, educated in this holistic way, would naturally contribute to the common good,
So bringing it back to us today, what can we take away from all this? It's clearly about more than just getting a job or a fancy title.
Plato's message is that education, real education, is about so much more. It's about developing our full potential as human beings, cultivating our character, becoming active participants in creating a just, flourishing world.
It's a reminder that learning is a lifelong journey, and that it can change us and the world around us for the better. Well, thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into Plato's educational philosophy. It's been quite a journey.
It has.
We hope you found it thought-provoking, and as always, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, keep learning. Thanks for listening.